This talk is by Dr. Sameena Shah. Dr. Sameena Shah is a director of research for Thomson Reuters and heads the R&D New York team. Sameena and her team build machine learning, natural language processing, artificial intelligence-based capabilities for Thomson Reuters businesses. Their most recent success story is Reuters News Tracer, which is an autonomous machine capable of sifting through millions of tweets every day to detect and verify newsworthy events. Sameena worked at a stat-arb hedge fund in New York City and a startup in India. She is also on the board of Cocoa Compassion, a social enterprise seeking to alleviate the social injustices in the cocoa supply chain. Sameena has a PhD in machine learning from IIT Delhi that was judged as one of the top for the year across India. She holds a master in computer applications and bachelor's in electronics engineering. Sameena has published more than 30 papers, holds multiple patents, won several awards, and is on the review panel of major computer science and electronic engineering journals and conferences.
it's already old news. Then there's too much noise. If you're searching for Apple, you'll get a bunch of things that are completely unrelated to the concept that you have in mind or you are looking for, but the words will pull up a lot of noise. So one major thing that happened was the prevalence of TweetDeck. So TweetDeck was a startup that Twitter bought a few years back for about 40 million. And what TweetDeck allows you to do is run these, create these decks in parallel, and you to allow multiple parallel searches. And that's about it. Parallel searches. But all of these problems that I was talking about, they still exist. So if you go and look at the word, you're trying to find out more information about Dell, if you think something is happening with Dell, these are the kinds of example tweets that will be pulled up. So you'll notice that there are advertisements. You'll notice that there is completely unrelated information. You'll notice that there is possibly something, possibly the last one that you were looking for. But the rest of it is useless, pretty much for you. So let's look at these results. So if these are the potential set of results that you're looking for, ideally, in your experience, what you would want is get rid of the spam, get rid of the noise, get rid of the mundane conversations, the chit-chat that mostly is what goes on Twitter. And actually, our statistic was that 99.99 of what goes on Twitter is clearly not newsworthy. It's 0.01, less than that, is what is potentially newsworthy. So that's still a big number, and we actually filter down even more. So what we did was we created a big platform, which we are calling a social data platform, in which we are ingesting all of Twitter. And then we have created layers of algorithms. So the first layer looks at the language construct of the tweet and other things like what is the account that it's tweeting from, what is the previous history of the account, so on and so forth, and then figures out whether it's an ad, whether it's a spam, whether it's a mundane conversation, whether it's a general chit-chat type of thing that nobody really cares about, and gets rid of that. So in this example, those would be the tweets that our system would get rid of. Then of the remaining that are potentially newsworthy, you'll see that these are still not really contextual. So there are tweets that get overloaded, but it's not very good for human consumption or even machine consumption. So the next layer of our algorithms, what they do is they look again at the language construct and other things, and then figure out what are the main nuggets of information that are being communicated through this. So what we'll figure out are what are the objects and subjects of that tweet. So in this case, we figure out that it's actually talking about a lockdown, and the other ones are talking about potentially a medicine that is on the market. So then what our machines are able to cluster that disparate stream of tweets that are coming in and create these two clusters. Once we create these two clusters, we then enrich it. So our next set of algorithms then enrich it. And we'll know, okay, so it's not showing very well, but what it's trying to say is that the star is the newsworthy one. The enrichment is figuring out whether a tweet is newsworthy or not. And the other enrichment is what broad topic category does it belong to. It's the health, it's politics, it's medicine, so on and so forth. And once we do that, we then enrich it with a lot more information about whether opinions are being expressed in it, whether a fact, assertion of a fact is being expressed on it. So an opinion would be, I love the latest iPhone. The assertion of a fact would be, the latest iPhone has a 2mm screen. Now remember, we still don't know whether the assertion of a fact is actually true or not. And that's where the next level of sophistication comes in, whether that is actually true or not. So which was, again, one of the things that we have done. So in this case, the GMO one turned out to be fake, and the other one turned out to be correct, the lockdown one. So once we do all of this, we present it on a UI, which is Reuters Tracer, which we recently publicly announced, and it got called the Cyborg of Journalism by Columbia Journal Review, and we also won the Coolest Demo at Strata Award. And it's doing pretty well. So this is one of the ways in which journalists are using it right now. So what you'll see is that people can create either the default ones, which are the newest or the trending, or they can create their own custom ones. So it could be Clinton, or it could be Trump, or it could be a broad industry like like a financial industry, or it could be a broad concept like geopolitical risk. So you can create all of these verticals, and then you can follow all the incoming news on that. And then there are filters that you can set whether you want to also see only newsworthy things, which are the starred one, because there's a whole spectrum of newsworthy things that you can view depending on whether, how much time and thresholds that you would like to set. And then there's other metadata that we have enriched it with. So the concepts that we are deriving are also helpful in figuring out what that tweet is really talking about. And once the clustering that we do, to make it more useful for our customers, we, on top of that, do a summarization that basically takes all the tweets and figures out what really all of those tweets are talking about and generates a summary. And that summary is what you are seeing here. So this is the architecture that we have in which we are ingesting these social media data. Then we have an ingestion platform in which we are bringing all of that data into a common format. So if tomorrow it's other types of data like Instagram, they all have the same consistent format. Then we have the different importance classifiers, which are the language identification, profanity detection, parts of speech tagging, then all the various types of message-based features, user-based features, how it's propagating type of features, all of those. Then the last set is the organization of information, bringing similar information together, separating out heterogeneous types of information. Then figuring out on each layer of the cluster whether it's what's the topic, what's the opinions, what are the facts, what are the and then another layer of newsworthiness detection, so on and so forth. And then on top of that, we have a summarization, the credibility analysis, and the knowledge base, which I'll go into now, all of which help us in determining whether something actually is true or not. So how do we do this? It sounds fancy, but what underneath the machine, what exists? It's pretty sophisticated. We have actually published about 20 papers in the top scientific journals and conferences. So we have released a lot of that publicly. So you can go and read on the details if you're more interested. But at a very high level, this is what we are doing. Once we get a cluster, we figure out what type of information that cluster is trying to say, whether it's a geography or a witnessable type of event that they're talking about, or whether it's what we call an expert-driven event. So an expert-driven event would be the kind of example I was talking about, that somebody who's claiming that they have information on the latest iPhone, the latest sports deal. So we assume that people who are known experts in those topics can only have that type of information. Known insiders, known people with long associations with that topic can only have that information. Whereas the witnessable ones are people like the average person who maybe even created their account yesterday. They could also possibly witness some bombing or some type of major accident on an important highway or a supply chain fire or things like that. So we first figure out what type of event it is. Once we figure that out, then we try to figure out other sources of information that we can pull from to get additional information on that event. So for the topic one, we then try to see how, if that person exists in our knowledge base, because we have already created a knowledge base of people who are known experts on certain areas. And I'll talk about the knowledge base in the next slide. And then for the other side, which is the witnessable one, we try to see who are the people who are in that area that are tweeting, and they are claiming the same thing. We also then link back to the municipalities, the fire department, the emergency response vehicles, and other organizations that all now seem to have Twitter handles, and look at what they are tweeting. And once we accumulate all of that information, we parse out about 700 different signals that we look at. They range from a variety of different categories. And then we basically say what's the likelihood of that thing being true or not. Now I'll speak about the knowledge base and how we try to extract information from the experts. And so this is an example of people who could be considered experts on the areas that they are associated with. So some examples that some features rather that jump out right at the beginning are the skewed follower-followee ratio, which I think is pretty standard. All of them have pretty skewed ratios. Then they seem to be verified. Then if you look at their biographies, the biographies of verified accounts generally tend to have some information that gives us an idea of what topic they are associated with. So we look at that. Then we look at how many people retweeted them, how many people favorited their tweets, so on and so forth, and then try to figure out if they really are experts or not. One important feature that I haven't talked about yet is using the wisdom of the crowd. So when anything unravels, we actually look at the conversation that's happening right now about that event. Who are the people who are jumping onto that conversation? Are journalists jumping onto that conversation or not? Because we find that that's actually an important clue, that if they have already looked at it and dismissed it, they will not jump onto that conversation. If they are jumping and there's a diversity of people who are jumping into that information, then that gives us a clue that it's actually something important that's happening, and it's something that could be true, because people are curious about it. Then we also look at the wisdom of the common crowd. What are they saying? Are people saying things that seem to indicate that they do believe it? That, yes, that did happen. I have a picture. Or I live in that neighborhood. This never happened. So those support and negation type of features, they tend to be pretty important as well. But the main one for witnessable ones are these types of agencies who then, people ask them these questions and also pull them into conversations, and they sometimes either validate it or negate it pretty quickly. Or if they're not saying anything at all, not even saying, hey, wait and watch, then we think that something likely did not happen because they don't even know about it. So that's kind of how we constructed our knowledge base. And one important signal for the knowledge base are the lists. So this is the list of the BBC. And these are all usually public. There could be private also, but all the public ones one can view. So for the public ones, you can go and look at the list that people have created. And if you start from the top, people like these, whom we can manually identify to be experts, and look at their list. Whom are these top people following? And then expand these lists. For example, BBC has created the list of news and politics, news, so on and so forth. And then you go and expand on this. And this, for example, this is a list of Yemen. And these are the people who have been listed for Yemen. So it's clear that if the top people are listing other people for certain topics, then these could be considered experts on that topic. So then we look at what these people are saying about the topic that was the cluster topic. So that's how we construct the knowledge base, and we pull other information from the crowd as well as the experts, so on and so forth, to create a measure of credibility to find out if something really is true or not. And that, again, is the last component of what we do. First step, filtering. Second step, organization, information, enrichment, and then verification. So yeah, I'll end it with that note, and I'll open it up for Q&A. Yes?
So imagine a story happens with a topic that's discussed a lot, like a really general something like Netflix. How do you detect that news is emerging rather than just clustering on Netflix? Do you use some sort of like time-sensitive idea breeding or something like that?
Yes, that's a great question. The question is for a broad category of topics like Netflix, with that people seem to always keep talking about. How do you find out if there's something emerging versus something that's just permanent, so to say. So if we go back to this slide, sorry it wasn't that clearly viewable, but we can maybe perhaps look at here. So these are the concepts that we derive. So in this, apart from Netflix, we would have also extracted other concepts. That would have given us an indication. So we use at least 2 concepts to construct a cluster. So it would be either Netflix and earnings, or Netflix and a CEO firing or something like that. That would create the topic. So if it's just I love Netflix kind of thing, that would have been already filtered out. Or if it's something about Netflix that, Netflix deal that people have been talking about already 10 days, our novelty features would get rid of that type of information.
So just for one clarification, in general, there has to be, if it's a really common topic, there have to be kind of 2 topics being discussed for it to actually be useful, or really minimum, right?
Yes, so we find that tweets in which we cannot even find 2 concepts are usually spammy tweets. If there's something that is happening, you need to have at least two abstract concepts being expressed in it. And they need not be entities. They could be something that's abstract in the sense that it could be a CEO firing, or they could be basically an object. A proper noun or an object should be, at least two of them should be present for it to have some importance to people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you do with, say, like very credible accounts that have like outlier posts? Like, there's this example of the AP tweeting that there's an explosion in the president's election. There's a huge reaction. And then you also have like Trump's like, very credible account or in a position of like credibility, but maybe his opinion changes. How do you deal with sort of the truth of like verifying?
Yes. So the question is, how do you find out the truth when either the account was hacked or the person has changed the opinion? So for the first part of the question, whether something was hacked, we are not able to tell that. If that AP thing happens again, we probably won't detect that unless people start saying, no, this never happened, and the emergency response sends out the negation and things like that. Till that point, we won't be able to say that that was fake. Only when that type of signals start coming in, at that point, we will flip the switch and say it actually is likely to be false. The other thing is, if we don't get supporting evidence, we never raise our confidence to be at a high level. So the dots I forgot to mention. Thank you for actually asking that question. The dots that you're seeing here, they range from yellow to green to red. So the red are the likely false, the yellow are the ambiguous information, and the green are the clearly true. Unless we find a lot of supporting evidences, we don't usually raise the machine doesn't raise the confidence to that high level that it's actually true. So in that situation, we would either be yellow or slightly green if it seemed to be supported in the beginning, depending on what the crowd is saying. And for the second question, if somebody is saying something and that person is credible and people do believe that person, even if that thing actually inherently is false, which is what we have seen with some of the fake news, we cannot detect that right now. If the White House says something that turns out to be false later, right now we would believe the White House, because we will see people who are supporting that. So the next step in our progression is actually tackling the fake news thing, for which we have to look at things like entailment and other things and bring in other evidences. But that's actually a much harder problem. But this also seemed to be a very hard problem when we began. Yes?
For financial, have you ever done like market impact studies?
Yes, so we did actually. Some of our colleagues in the financial part of our business, they looked at that, and so for some, so the success of Tracer has been quite phenomenal actually. For the last year, we tracked 37 major events of international importance that happened, and we found that of those, 3 were what we call expected events, like Netflix earnings, coincidentally, that got released, and other things that Obama was going to give a speech and things like that. For those 3 events for which it was expected that that information is going to come out, our journalists or any other journalists across the globe were already on spot, and Tracer was behind on those 3 events. Of the 34 events, that some of it was expected and largely it was unexpected major things that happened, like the Nice bombing or the attacks in Paris, so on and so forth. On all 34 events, Tracer was actually ahead of all international media by very substantial amounts, ranging from 8 minutes to 60 minutes. So we've also published that in one of our papers of how faster we were, and all of it is public now. So to question your initial question about the financial impact, one of the studies that internally one of our colleagues had done was the Brussels bombing, when we gave the signal versus other organizations when they started releasing that information. There was a huge time period in which somebody could have potentially profited had they known about that information, because we were for that instance, we were 8 minutes ahead. Unexpected events, yes.
Unexpected witness.
Yes.
The expert ones.
Yes. I mean, expert ones, if people already know that this expert is going to release this information at this time, journalists are already there in the room. I mean, if expert releases information that's unexpected, we'll still be ahead. Yes.
What kind of system do you use to analyze hundreds of minutes of data?
Kafka? Yeah.
Similar to Spark?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I was curious about your expert determination, and it's sort of a more subtle question, which is more obscure news. And I live in a neighborhood in Cambridge, and there's some interesting things that go on. Can you derive what an expert is from looking at the news, rather than using experts to figure out whether that's credible?
That's a much harder problem. So the question is, instead of looking at other experts and navigating the graph that way, can you just look at the language and figure out whether that person who's talking is the expert or not? I think that problem is a much harder problem, and as human beings also, it's very hard for us to solve or understand that just from the language, and it would be hard for machines to just get that if they're not supported by a huge knowledge base of what could be called expert knowledge and topics and fine constructs that could be called expert kind of evidences and things like that. If machines have that type of knowledge base sitting behind them, then we could possibly address that question. Yes?
Related question. So how much of these categories, the experts, are you and your team creating labels for at the beginning, and how much is being constructed by supervisors?
Yeah, so the only thing we did in the beginning was we found out who are the top experts from some of our journalists for certain areas. And then since then, the machines are running all the time, and they keep updating as new experts get added to those lists and old experts get removed. That if they're not continuously tweeting about similar ideas, we think we should remove them. So because Twitter also has the rate limitations on the amount of content we can pull, so we need to be a little parsimonious in our lists. So we only keep the top experts.
And what about the categories like finance? Do you create those, or do you allow them to be created?
Yeah, so initially we created them to be aligned with the Reuters topics. Yes, sorry, there was a question there? Oh, no, okay.
So can you also figure out if there's tension between two topics?
Yes. Yes, that's actually one of the signals we use. If there is tension between the topics and if there are polarized groups, then we know that this is something that's controversial, so it could be controversial if it's an opinion. If it's an assertion of a fact, then we think it's not clear what the probability of being true or not is. Then in those we adjust the machine's probability in either case.
Could I filter, for example, on, let's take Clinton. I certainly filter on the straightforward news. Could I filter on Clinton controversy or some tension within that category?
So the question is, I fill on Clinton and controversies. So right now on the UI, the only way you can do it is if you look at, you create the deck for Clinton and you look at rumors, which is like rumors/opinionated news. So those would be the ones that will keep popping up in that deck then. Yes?
So the categorization for and or clauses when you're doing your filtering, that's already predetermined?
Sorry?
Is it predetermined, or can you select any wording that you're choosing?
You can select anything.
Filtering.
So the UI is just a way of surfacing information. You can choose any words of your choice or any query, however you want to construct it. Everything that's going behind the scenes is none of it is pre-filtered by us. It's very much bottom up, and it's very much organic in the sense so that if there's anything that could be potentially newsworthy, we don't eliminate it.
And your default clusters, are those filterable? Or?
Yes, So the question is, are the clusters themselves filterable? Yes. So this box that you see, which is the search box, you can further drill down on in each cluster if you want to do other types of filterings. Yes. And this is only one of the ways in which Reuters Tracer is available. There are other feeds that we have created for our financial customers, which is the RTrace feed, which is in Icon, which is our flagship product in the financial industry. And there are other variants that we are creating. One is specifically for the supply chain, and so on and so forth. Yes.
Have you explored photo analysis as part of context with digital tweets? I understand it's a unique problem in itself, but it could provide additional information.
Yes, so the question is, are we looking at image analysis to find out if something is true or not? Right now, the only thing we are looking at is whether somebody is saying that I am there, and this is the image that supports that, but we actually don't verify the authenticity of the image right now. Okay.
Is there a way to use a service through an API? Like if I tell you, can you check if this M&A event is true? Tell me back the score.
So the question is, if the service is available as an API in which the query is this M&A event true? So it is available as an API, but it's not available with that type of, that you just send the tweet and we verify yes or no. Right now, it's not available that way. Yes. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So the question is, how does the algorithm improve on its own, or it's something else? So one of the features here is the star feature, and the other topics. All of them are actually clickable. And so if you think that you don't agree with certain things, so if something we have starred as newsworthy, but you don't think it's newsworthy, you can click that, and that feedback will come to us. If you think either of those topics or concepts is wrong, and you click that and you send that as feedback, all of it comes back to us, and the machine learns over time.
So could you go into a bit more detail about the cluster enrichment process? I was under the impression, I could be wrong, it seemed like you're dealing with most of these subjects and objects and how you're forming your clusters. It seems on the surface that you could lose that information, lose like other information about like actions or stuff like that, if you're just only using subjects and objects. So how do you sort of get that back and tell us what the cluster really or not was an action?
That's a good question. We look at the cluster. When we cluster, we look at 4 or 5 different things: who, where, when, what, and I forget the 5th one. So these are the 5 questions, and we kind of do some slot filling depending on where each of these objects or subjects or other things are fitting. And around those we cluster. So if you send me an email, I'll send you the paper in which we have talked about details of our clustering algorithm.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sameena, very much.
Yes, thank you.